Hi everyone, it's Jeff from Coder Kids. Visit us over at coderkids.com for cool virtual camps, technology and coding and gaming. Wanted to tackle a topic today that I think is pretty simple, pretty interesting, definitely in the Coder Kids wheelhouse, and that is, what is the easiest programming language for kids? So I get asked this question quite a bit, and I just got to tell a little personal story. So when I first started Coder Kids, I did not know much about computer programming except for what I had known, what I had learned in high school. And truth is, things have changed a lot since I was in high school. And so I kind of had a lot of learning to do. Had explored code.org a little bit when I was a teacher. And so easiest programming language for kids, something I can speak to personally, because you can't just dive into these things and learn a really challenging programming language overnight. At the same time, it's not necessary to learn everything that there is to know about a programming language all at once. So there's a lot of resources online and things that you can access. So depending on the age, I would say the easiest programming language for kids is probably Scratch Junior. Scratch Junior allows you to build stories, animations, really simple games like a maze, or just like kind of silly games. So you can do that in Scratch Junior, and I would recommend that as kind of the very, very beginning starting point, apart from like logic games and things like that kids might be interested in. Next, I would dive into Scratch. So, I mean, you can definitely do code.org, which is a great website and has a lot of resources, and it's great for the same age as Scratch Junior. And there's a lot of like kind of games and things that are also easy for kids. But code.org is not a programming language, so we'll stick to programming languages. Next up, I would go with Scratch for sure. Scratch is a really great resource. Teaches a lot of logic, a lot of skills. You do need to know kind of how to read and how to like understand what the different code blocks mean. But by the time you get to Scratch, you can develop some really cool games, animations. There are adults who are using Scratch who are building some super awesome stuff. So I would highly, highly recommend that your child get into Scratch, at least for a little bit. And then after Scratch, or at the same time as Scratch, again, the question is easiest. So if I had to choose an easiest programming language after Scratch, personally, I would choose Python. I've done quite a bit with Python and even some Pygame stuff and things like that. And I would say that Python is the easiest. It's a scripting language, and it allows kids to really get some. I guess when I think of easy, I think like, all right, so what are some quick wins that I can get? Like if a kid logs into Scratch, the very first day they're going to be able to get something done, and they're going to be able to see the cat spin around in a circle or something. It's that easy. With Python, I think it's a more advanced level than Scratch, but with a little bit of guidance or a small tutorial, they can still create like a text-based game or something like that is really simple. After Python, obviously there's a lot of programming languages that kids can dive into, and these days there's even more. I mean, it's like every time I talk to people, it's like there's some new programming language coming out that's kind of gaining popularity, gaining steam. But I do recommend that they kind of take some time to tinker around. There are some different things that they can use to create simple animations. A lot of my teachers in the past, it might be a little bit outdated, but a lot of them have really liked a program called Alice that allows for some basic 3D coding, 3D editing. So just kind of starting to tinker around. In terms of the easiest thing, though, I would say after Python, you could dive into like some basic Minecraft modding, start fooling around with like skins And then you can download Forge and you can kind of follow some of the tutorials to do some really easy stuff there, fairly easy. One thing I forgot to mention is like websites. So I think building a really simple like HTML website that has, maybe some basic CSS or some basic styling would be pretty easy. I think that doing some really basic JavaScript stuff could also be fairly easy depending on which libraries you're using. And then after that, I mean, by the time that you're at this point, I just think my mindset is that it doesn't really matter if it's easy or hard. You've had the kind of practice and you've got the mindset down so that hopefully you can just dive in to whatever programming language you feel like, kind of based on which project you want to do, and you have the mindset to like stick with it and figure out the solutions. So, I mean, you might, at that point, you might say, gosh, I really want to develop an iOS app for the iPhone. And I would recommend at that point that you go and you get yourself a book. There's actually a really great book that I can link to in the description below. And, you could just go and get that iOS development book and dive into it and do a tutorial. And then it'll give you a little bit of a preview. So then you can go and tackle more challenging things. So at some point you don't really want to do easy. You don't really want to choose things because they're easy. You want to choose things because you are interested in them and because you have a project that you want to do that requires that. So like if you're working on an Arduino and you want to learn C, then like it doesn't really matter at that point if it's easy anymore, right? Or if you are trying to do Unity and you want to build yourself like a small 3D game and maybe it requires some C#, then dive into it, and see what you can do. And maybe it won't be easy anymore, but kids, they have the time. They have the time and energy to figure some of this stuff out. So those are kind of my basic suggestions. Honestly, I would, I've talked to a lot of kids, a lot of people who are kind of getting their start in programming. And one last thing I'll say is I kind of recommend just like, even for adults who are getting started in coding, even if it's just 1 hour or, one day, to just spend it in Scratch Junior and tinker around with it. See what you can build. See if you can create something like really unique. And then go to Scratch itself. Spend a week or two in Scratch. There's nothing that says that you you have to dive in to this one certain programming language. I like the idea of starting out easy. So tinker with Scratch, play around with it. It's fun. See what you can build. And then from there, you've kind of got yourself a nice little foundation. And I think that there's a lot that you can tackle from there. But if you are dedicated and super into it, then I'll just say it one more time. I don't think it necessarily matters what's the easiest. It just matters that you have a project that you want to build and that you're into it. So I'll leave that with you. Visit us at coderkids.com if you want more insights. We actually have a ton of articles at our blog. So come and visit the blog, read some of the topics that we've been writing about, and would love to get your feedback and would love to see your child in a class. Thanks.